Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports Soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, NWSL analyst and broadcaster. The NWSL is back. We've got regular season action that is going to be returning this weekend. So we're going to hit you all up with a weekend preview of all 5 games. All the teams are scheduled to compete at the moment. But we're also going to fill everyone in on some news updates as well, because that is what we do here. We try to make sure that everybody is informed. Before we get into everything, a quick reminder to follow us on Twitter at Attacking Third. And you can also head over to our YouTube page and hit subscribe to never miss a new video, interview, or whenever we go live. Plus, you can catch great highlights from NWSL and World Cup qualifying matches. So go over to youtube.com/attacking third, hit subscribe, and check out all of our videos. Lisa, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Sandra. I'm okay. I'm repping my Marquette women's soccer gear. They are in town playing Villanova for some Big East action this weekend. So go Marquette, go Golden Eagles women's soccer. You always have to rep where you come from,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. You see me coming correct. I'm here in my White Sox gear. At our time of recording this, the Chicago White Sox could very well clinch the Central Division, and I am personally very excited about it. I know people are taking a look at our backgrounds, Lisa, and they always take a notice of my Sox 35th sign, or in this case, my White Sox hat that's on. But
So
I'm
if we
excited.
hear you start screaming and celebrating during this episode, it's only because the Sox clinch.
Absolutely. Just ignore it, and I'm just giving context. I'm just giving feedback in case I break for a second. That's what it's going to be in reaction to. And there it is. They actually just clinched. I'm a happy girl, Lisa.
Oh, congrats, Sandra. This is so exciting. Live reaction. White Sox clinch. Sandra, how did they do it? Are you so pumped? Will you be there?
They're in Cleveland right now. So they just clinched the 2021 AL Central division. So that's really exciting. It's been a long time coming, and I am a happy camper. So it's nice. Sports, it can bring us the highest of highs and also the lowest of lows, quite frankly. So let's get into it, Lisa. This is an NWSL episode, so we're going to keep our focus on that. But guess what? There's more news out of Washington Spirit. I know you and I had an episode where I believe it was one of our mailbag segments. It was kind of our news and notes episodes. And at the time, we had tried to keep our listeners up to date at that point on what was sort of coming out of the Washington Spirit. But there's been some additional things that have happened, some conclusions, some things that are still open-ended. But we both sort of felt that the best way to kind of go through this and leading up to the recent reports is maybe sort of run down the timeline of things. And we're going to do that for our listeners right now, just in case you two are like, geez, what is going on and how do we figure it out, and like, how do you piece everything together? So in terms of the Washington Spirit, it was reported back in early August, we'll say around the 10th or so, that former head coach Richie Burke had stepped down from the head coaching role with the Spirit due to health concerns. And essentially, a mere 12 to 24 hours later, both the league and this Spirit were reached out to by the Washington Post, for an investigative report that was currently taking place around head coach Richie Burke for things like abusive behavior or reports of like a toxic culture. And then that following morning, once the report was released, additional newer statements were made by both the Spirit and the league, saying that due to the credible reporting that there was a current investigation for all of those things underway in regards to the Washington Spirit and Richie Burke.
So that happened pretty early on, which we were aware about, and we had reported on that it initially, which red flags to us and I think to a lot of fans out there, that initially it was reported that these were health concerns. And then very, very quickly it became, no, this is an investigation for abusive behavior against Richie Burke, which was surprising to a number of fans, but also not so surprising based on Richie Burke's background. He had previously been flagged, I'm going to say, for that type of behavior, never coaching in the NCAA before or never coaching professionally before. He was still given this job at the Washington Spirit. Then as events continue to go on, there were maybe some things that happened within Washington Spirit that surface level fans aren't so aware of, that didn't make the biggest news with partnerships and things that happened there. That was later on in August, maybe a week or so after this initial announcement. Sandra, what contracts were made and what happened that maybe Spirit supporters weren't so happy about?
Yeah, so getting into rolling on with the chronological order of these things, before we actually jump into that, I also want to make an important note that within that initial reporting regarding the culture at the Spirit and the head coach in Richie Burke, that former Washington Spirit player Kai McCullough went on record within that reporting, which was a very, very brave thing to do, all things considered, and the very type of sensitive reporting that is involved in that. While a number of other players wanted to remain anonymous for, quite frankly, fear of backlash from that. So that's a very, very tense moment to have coming out of your club, and to just a week to 10 days later make the announcement of a front jersey sponsorship at the time, which was with IntelliBridge, which is a defense contractor, homeland security, law enforcement, and the front of the jersey is a very, very big deal. It's what everybody is going to be really taking a look at firsthand, and that didn't resonate very well with the fandom of the Spirit at the time, and they sort of express that in the following game. So the Spirit ended up hosting North Carolina Courage on August 29th, and this was on the same night where the Spirit announced a service member appreciation night. So in that, there was the announcement of the front jersey sponsor with IntelliBridge. There was the announcement that they were going to pay homage specifically to a former General Michael Hayden of the U.S. Air Force, that he used to serve as the NSA chief and CIA director and oversaw many, many things. And a lot of the response from the fandom to that was not positive. There were fans who were reacting to that, talking about how the club was making a choice and that they were deliberately choosing to honor what they considered, a war criminal who elevated violent, dangerous, things. And so it was not something that resonated well with the fandom. So on the surface level, it's like, oh, hey, here's a front jersey sponsor, here's some money, but the fan base is incredibly engaged in this league. I think they have shown that time and time again. So once this was announced, it was 0% shocking that they were doing their own due diligence and taking a look into things, and seeing if any of this may be aligned with their own core beliefs, and it just didn't, and it kind of really just boiled over.
It did at that point. So this was the August 29th game hosted by the Washington Spirit against North Carolina Courage. And this is when we first saw the outward support of the supporters group for Washington Spirit. And we saw a big banner sign in the stadium saying, "Sell the team, Steve." And that sign went viral on social media, and people saw it and people heard it. So is that sign in reaction to the Richie Burke investigation, or the contract partnership, or honoring a general at the game? There's a lot of things undergoing there, but it all really surfaced at the same time. So the sign, "Sell the team, Steve," came from the Rose Room Collective, the supporter group for the Spirit and DC United, which are a collective of intersectional POC soccer supporters who put up that sign, Sandra. So what is the sign in reaction to?
I mean, I'm just going to echo what I already said. Like it's obviously at this point in terms of us going through this timeline, it's like the repetitive culmination of events, like just the failure to sort of really have your pulse on the culture of the team, and by extension it's the fandom that supports it. So to just sort of have everything coming out around Richie Burke, and then taking a step back, even going back into 2019 and how he was appointed, that it just really echoed and looked like this was a coach that got brought in with very minimal experience and and some due to stronger ties to and the administration that was in place of the franchise, as opposed to like their own experience. So Richie Burke was coming in to coach a women's professional soccer side with just some youth coaching experience and never having the experience of coaching within the women's or non-men's side of the game before. So these are all like a culmination of events for only 2 years later to have this type of reporting come out about toxic culture, abusive language, abusive harassment type level behavior, and then having the announcement of the IntelliBridge, Front Jersey sponsor. It's just sort of, and this is very early in this timeline, but even then, it just sort of feels like that's just a boiling over. So
yes,
the fandom went ahead and they wanted to express themselves, and they tried to do that. And if anything, them being asked to take that type of stuff down within the game, because they were asked to take it down, I think just sort of continues to keep that bad blood boiling.
Yes. So this happened. This was the game on August 29th. As we mentioned, this was happening late in August. I'm going to keep our timeline on track here for all of our listeners. So then about a week later, not even, September 4th, the Washington Spirit versus Portland Thorns match was postponed at that point, reportedly due to 4 positive COVID cases within the Washington Spirit organization and the players.
Yeah. That was tough, to sort of see that happen. We're talking about a regular season in 2021 that, coming off of a 2020, none of us were really sure was going to happen. Navigating this type of stuff in a pandemic still has so many unknowns, and having a regular season in 2021, a full calendar year, really, when we're looking at it, we're talking about, it was like the first time it was like a very long extended preseason for these clubs. Then there was the continuation of the Challenge Cup in a second, annual year. Then it was like, hey, here's a regular season, let's go. And all of this is happening because at the time, you would imagine that there's like this very mutual collective agreement that, hey, we're all going to need to really try our best here to ensure the best practices to navigate a professional league through a pandemic. And then so to sort of see that this first game gets canceled, because that's what it was a postponement with the Thorns. Postponed. But it was due to a string of COVID positive tests. So it was about 4 that it was, I believe, reported at the time that it was 4 cases and that they had to postpone it. And there was the impression that there was going to be an eventual later date for this one, but that wasn't necessarily true.
Yes. So this initially came out, and as Sandra mentioned, the league had already done this. The league back in 2020 was the first professional league to do a bubble in the Challenge Cup and have it be success with not one single person testing positive. So when this news came out with the 4 positive cases, I think people were a little disappointed, but also vaccinated people can still test positive for COVID. There are a number of factors that go into this, but as time went on, more and more information came out about this. Immediately after this initial postponement was announced, reports started surfacing about where the players may have gotten COVID or what may have happened. And it was reported that part owner Y. Michelle Kang was under investigation for hosting a dumpling making party, which is maybe where the COVID outbreak spread. Sandra, what's your intel on that situation?
I don't know if I would call it intel, but I think my immediate reaction to it, honestly, was just irresponsible. Just irresponsible and really, really sad, quite frankly. It just was, I think the reaction to this reporting, which basically was a tweet from a media person who has ties to the DC area, but not necessarily the Washington Spirit. And then all of a sudden, during the biggest kind of news cycle around the club, there is apparently a very specific tweet about a very specific investor in the group. And I think the reaction to it just sort of spoke more volumes than the actual supposedly sourced information. And that so many within the soccer space were debunking this type of, reporting, and quite frankly, questioning the credibility of it. And rightfully so, because for a number of reasons, a news cycle is rapid, right? Lots of things happen, things change, new information gets presented. Um, and also it was very dangerous. And I think I echoed this on our previous episode where we were talking about the Washington Spirit news at the time, which wasn't as lengthy, as it is now. But I refer to it as dangerous because it is, and it was, and it still is. To continue to sort of put things out there that could potentially fan the flames of racist and racialized moments against people who suffer these type of things all the time. So to put that out there is very, very dangerous, especially in a time, in an era where where we're seeing hate crimes against Asian American Pacific Islanders just sort of at a level really unheard of before. So it's dangerous to put something out there like that without doing so. That's what I refer to it as irresponsible, to just sort of to be fed something as a person in media and to not do your due diligence to go and try to fact check that yourself.
So to clarify, it's the not well done and the disappointment that you have is not from the dumpling making party, but instead of the reports that were made about it because they were not checked.
Yeah, so if you're having like an ongoing investigation happening, at this point you have a game that was canceled and postponed, you're gonna look into the reasons why. So if you're looking into these reasons and you're just sort of throwing something like this out there, it's irresponsible to not do your due diligence behind it, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's irresponsible to have a dumpling making party. We're living in a time right now during the pandemic where people are having gatherings and they are trying to do so responsibly. It's irresponsible to put out something like that and not do your due diligence behind it, especially, if you're someone who is not typically within the space of providing coverage of the league.
Yes. So this that was what was reported with not a lot of credibility, but social media plays a huge part in journalism these days and in the spreading of news and also the spreading of rumors. It was also reported that another part owner, Steve Baldwin, was the one that put Kang under investigation during this time.
That was actually reported and confirmed by The Athletic, I believe. So that there was, because of that being put out there, and because I'm sure at the time all things were being looked at as to what happened here, why is there a string of positive cases at the Washington Spirit? You're looking at everything, right? But in doing that, you're finding out different reasons or outlets as to why, and it was confirmed by The Athletic that Steve Baldwin went ahead and sort of asked for this investigation to take place.
So this all happened early September, and then we heard from Kaya McCullough herself, who was the former Washington Spirit player, who was the only person to go on record initially with the Washington Post article that really started these investigations for former head coach Richie Burke. So Kaya McCullough has a podcast called Unfiltered with Kaya McCullough, and she has an episode called Truth Be Told. And she dives into her experiences because in the Washington Post article, she gave some very explicit examples of what had happened. But since the article came out, McCullough had not spoken freely. She had been asked to go on podcast, asked for other interviews, and asked for articles, and she had said no. So she took her own protected space of her own podcast to use her voice to speak to her experiences. It's also a YouTube video, which you can watch her and watch her face, which I think is really powerful and moving. It's called Unfiltered with Kaya McCullough, and it's the episode is called Truth Be Told. So that came out about September 10th. Sandra, did you listen to that and watch that video at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're in an interesting time right now where not only, is it important that players feel comfortable and are given, room and time and space to share their truths and share their experiences, yes, absolutely. But it's on the other side of that, it's also very tough. It's also those are also very difficult conversations. Those are tough things to hear. Especially for a player like, McCullough, whose experience is very layered. It's not just one dimensional. And within her podcast and on her video, which people can go and check out and see and examine for themselves, she talks about all these different areas in which she essentially experienced trauma, that it's not just one direct way. So we're talking about issues of, harassment, verbal abuse, racism. These are things that not every player can relate to. Her experiences are going to be different from a non-Black player. And people need to try to empathize with that as the best way they can.
And a 23-year-old, nonetheless.
Yeah, Kai McCullough, very young. You're talking about a player who got drafted, and then the pandemic hit, and immediately sort of found that it was not a safe place for her anymore. And she talks a lot about that. That's what soccer used to be for her. That it was something that helped her out through a lot of difficult times. And I really do want people to go on over and check that out if they're able. So I'm not going to get too into that, but they should go and check it out. But it's a very deep dive that she quite frankly didn't have to take, but she did.
She had already taken the first step, speaking with the Washington Post and going on record to be a witness in that situation, and then to really open herself up even more to the vulnerability of sharing her experience. It's very, very powerful. Sticking with chronological order of all of the news that has come out of Washington Spirit, we are in the second week of September at this point, when the second match for the Washington Spirit, originally scheduled against OL Reign, is forfeited immediately from the league. It's issued a forfeit due to the Spirit's breach of medical protocol. So at this point, the Portland Thorns game is still considered a postponement due to the 4 COVID cases, yet this OL Reign game is immediately issued a forfeit. And due to that, under FIFA rules, OL Reign received a win in the schedule, 3 points, and a 3-0 win over the Spirit after this match, which did cause some uprise for Portland Thorns players and supporters, understandably, because their match was postponed, yet OL Reign received the win in this column. But at this point in the announcement, it was due to the Spirit's breach of medical protocol. And what else did we learn from that news report that came out about this forfeit?
Well, I mean, we saw a lot of quick reaction to it as well. We saw more discourse, quite frankly. That was the first thing that happened out of this. And we also learned some things. The league put a name on it. They put a consequence on it. It was the first time that the league ever issued a forfeiture in its history, and they issued it to the Washington Spirit, and they issued it due to breach of medical protocol. And that was in regard to the ongoing pandemic. And then, sort of like tying all these strings together, the equalizer eventually confirmed that the COVID outbreak among the Spirit was in fact due to that. It was because of breach of medical protocol, that a player essentially traveled out of market, did not quarantine after the timing of travel upon their return, and then all of a sudden you see a string of positive cases. So to sort of have all that come out, and then sort of again tying all these strings together and seeing the irresponsible tweeting that's taking place, around, an Asian, female owner in the league and a dumpling making party, and sort of all of those things sort of somehow look uglier, as more credible reporting comes out about it. So, yeah, tough.
Very tough. Then most recently, September 23rd, reported out of the Washington Post again, an NWSL investigation. They initially reported that the Richie Burke investigation way back in the end of August and early September. And now in late September, September 23rd, the Post again reports that they've widened they've widened the investigation to include allegations of a toxic workplace for women, according to several current and former employees. So this news initially breaking not even a month after the initial investigation happened. It seems fast, but we learned so much in the reporting that came September 23rd.
Yeah, it's and it as more concrete and credible reporting comes out, it just continues to it's lengthy. It's lengthy, the timeline that we're going through, but it is essential and helpful to sort of hopefully eventually reach a conclusion at some point. Once the equalizer went ahead and confirmed the breach of medical protocol, there were additional things also being tweeted out by various reporters that was leading to this report today that at the time president of business operations Lindsay Berens had apparently stepped away from the club. And this sort of was in light of all of the IntelliBridge sponsorship, that she was one of the few, head of position type of people who had raised concerns around that sponsorships, and it sort of fell on deaf ears. She departed from the club, and now here we are, September 23rd, reacting to this and seeing this extra report coming out of the Washington Post that multiple people have left, or multiple women specifically have left. And that's important to note when the investigation that is occurring around the Washington Spirit is around allegations of a toxic environment and a toxic culture at the franchise and at the club level. That the fact that 40% of the female staff that were initially named on the club website have left since June is alarming. And the fact that 3 of 5 of those female department heads have left this month alone is doubly alarming. It's not healthy. And again, it just feeds more into the already bad blood that has boiled over when it comes to this particular franchise and the supporters who support it. At the end of it's not the end of the day, but at the time of this reporting out of the Post, this updated reporting out of the Post, you had the official Washington Spirit supporters group release a statement of their own. So you have what's considered, it's the official supporters group. So it's the one group of fans who are supposed to be the ones who are just relentless and unmoving in their and unwavering in their support of the club. But all things have their breaking point. And they also released a very, well worded statement that just
and this is a different supporters group than the Rose Room Collective that initially put out the Sell the Team Steve sign.
Correct.
Way earlier on August 29th. And now this group is the Spirit Squadron, who is more officially known as the team's supporters group.
Yeah, they've been around since the jump, since the beginning. So we're talking about a league that's entering its 10th season next year, and that this is a supporters group that has been in place for, since the beginning. And they released the following statement: "We no longer have confidence that Steve Baldwin can effectively lead the Washington Spirit until new ownership publicly puts forth a plan that ensures a safe environment for players and staff and commits to a true vetting process for hiring qualified employees at the highest levels. We will limit our game day activities. This includes the flying of flags, chants, and the playing of drums in the supporter sections. To the players of the Washington Spirit, this is not a decision that we have come to lightly. We understand that our actions will have an immediate and adverse effect on the atmosphere we help to create in the stadium on game day. However, we cannot continue to operate as if there is not a cancer eating away at the heart and soul of this club that you play for and that we love. We have seen enough. It is past time. Sell the team, Steve." So they tweeted this today from their official account, really just, adjacent to, the updated reporting from the Washington Post about so many, women executives exiting the club. So it's very telling.
I think when fans initially read this statement, and this statement calls the inside and the culture that is being harvested at Washington Spirit a cancer that is eating away at the heart. And I think when initially fans of the league and of the Washington Spirit read this statement, they were like, oh, it's all due to the Richie Burke investigation, which I firmly believe is a majority of the reason that this statement came out. But once you look at the full timeline of what has happened based on the sponsorship announcement and hire female executives leaving within the company and sell the team Steve coming on a Spirit night honoring the service members, there are so many layers to this announcement that was put out by the supporters group for the Spirit that it's not one-fold. It's probably not even two-fold, maybe three, 4, 5-fold. There's so many layers to this situation and to this statement. And I firmly believe that this decision, as they said, especially for the players, did not come lightly. Lots of conversations and lots of how can the supporters group make a difference, stand behind the players on the field while also trying to make a stand for the club that they love, that they want to see succeed. Because these supporters, they give everything to these teams and to these clubs, and they want to see them win and succeed. That's not like they're looking to burn the club to the ground by any means. In actuality, it's the opposite of that. They're looking to raise the club up so it can be the best in the league.
Yeah, it's I would imagine. I mean, we just sat here and went through a chronological timeline for our listeners. So, if we did this in 20 to 30 minutes, I would imagine that the fact that this has gone on for weeks and weeks and weeks, that it was something that this official supporters group had been weighing, the option of making a move like this themselves. I mean, when you talk about, when I mention or say something like things have a boiling point, this was obviously theirs, and the fact that within their statement, they also additionally extended an apology directly to the players of the Washington Spirit. They understand the severity of that decision, the weight of that decision, and how that looks. And I think, when we're tying this and trying to connect this all together to the league, it's, I would imagine if you're the league in a year like 2021, where a lot of the conversation has been around what's considered the hardcore fan base and trying to build out and extend that and grow that. And then you sort of see what's happening with the Spirit franchise, and then seeing what's considered the hardcore fan base sort of take this stance. This has to raise concerns and to raise certain alarms, I think.
Of course. And you look at this year, and this is the first year that the league, the NWSL, has put into place an anti-harassment policy. In April of 2021, that's when they announced the policy to protect the players for a safe work environment. But it only came out this year, and now all of these allegations and investigations are bubbling to the surface. So this policy, which is something that Kaya McCullough does talk about in her podcast and on her YouTube episode, but I don't think that it's well known enough among the players about what they are protected by and against in this league. So this anti-harassment policy put into place this year, how do you see it, Sandra? What is the point of it for this year? What is the hope of it moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the fact that it kind of came to light this year sort of speaks volumes. Why was something like this not in place before? But the fact of the matter is that it is here now. And you would assume that its purpose is to better the league and to be the vessel, be the vehicle, provide a service essentially for the players across the league, really by a larger extension staff across the league, to provide a safe, confidential avenue for those same players, those same staff to feel like they can come forward, and have an outlet to go to directly to the league. And we are starting to see that sort of be put into work, I think, in this. So as a policy got put into place, we're starting to see beginnings of what the effect of that policy can be. So there's still some ongoing things that are taking place with the Washington Spirit. There aren't a ton of resolutions right now. There are investigations that are still ongoing and clearly reporting that is still happening. But ultimately, for now, that's what the anti-harassment policy in place is serving to do. It's creating these types of opportunities, and hopefully that's essentially what this is going to be looked at, that these are opportunities, as painful as they are, for the league to only grow and be better from this. So we'll see. It's a lot. We went through a lot chronologically for our listeners here. Hopefully everyone is caught up to date. Hopefully you have got some holes filled in if you've been trying to follow along with this. We are going to take a quick break because we still, believe it or not, have some NWSL action to get through for you all. We're going to go through some previews and picks, and we'll be right back after a quick break. Weekend preview time, Lisa. Are you ready to talk about some NWSL action?
I'm so ready. We had a bye week. We did get some international action during that bye week, which I do enjoy. It keeps my soccer juices flowing, but I miss the league play, especially because the standings are so tight. There's so many back and forth. Players are really coming into their own. I missed it. I missed the league. I'm glad it's back. And all 10 teams are playing 5 games, a full slate ahead of us for the weekend. Thank goodness.
Saturday and Sunday, we've got games on the slate. I'm excited about it. The table starting to have some separation, I think, when you're looking at the top stuff, but the middle is still up for grabs. We've got a couple of matches, a doubleheader taking place on Saturday. Let's get into it. We're going to get you all some picks. We'll try to get through these quickly for y'all. We know you've been hanging out with us for a little while. We've got Gotham FC versus North Carolina Courage. I'm not too sure how to go in this one, Lisa. The other thing that we got to let our listeners know is the NWSL is returning because they're coming off of an international break during this FIFA window in which a lot of players departed for international duty. A number of them, obviously, for United States women's team, but, Brazilians as well, getting some games on the schedule there, and a couple English internationals as well. So looking at this game with Gotham versus North Carolina, I think the easy thing to say is that Gotham is in need of a win, right? For sure, more than North Carolina. But I'm not too sure if they're going to get it. They're doing very well at not losing, but they have got to get themselves a win in this one, Lisa. So I think the desperation is going to hit them a little bit, and they got to really hit go mode. And also, this is going to be a really big opportunity for head coach Scott Parkinson to be on the sideline and kind of get some real game day coaching in with this squad. And we also are, do want to make a note that we are recording this, prior to any official injury report announcements of the league. So we are on the assumption that, Mitch Purse may or may not be available. So if Margaret Purse is someone who is unavailable, that's going to hurt the Gotham. If she's available, guess what? That is going to help them a whole lot. So even with the unknowns, I got to feel like Gotham is fine. Maybe going to find themselves in a corner. They're going to come out swinging. So I think I'm going to go with Gotham on this one. Lisa, how about you?
It's so true. This is a must win for Gotham. They really don't have an option at this point. They're number 8 in the standings. They have 22 points and about 5 or 6 games left for Gotham in order to get in one of those top 6 playoff spots. And this bye week, the last week, I think it helped more teams than it hurt most teams. And I'm going to keep coming back to that as we go through each of these matches. And for Gotham, I think it helped them because they had injuries. Players like Margaret Purse, who had been out for a number of weeks due to, I think, a quad injury she has. And a week off is a great opportunity for any team to rest up and recover. And Gotham, they've had 3 weeks off. Frankly, they have not played a game since September 4th against Chicago. It was a 0-0 tie. It's really a nice break for them, which, frankly, I think Gotham needed. They were on a 7-game winless streak before this 3-week break that they had. So since July 25th, they have recorded 3 ties and 4 losses. So they don't even understand the taste of winning in their mouth yet. I think Ifeoma Onumonu has had a good string of games. She's number 2 in the Golden Boot race right now. She has 7 goals on the season, so she's a factor in the front line that I'm looking forward to seeing. But then when you look at the North Carolina team, they're coming off a 1-0 loss to Portland before the bye week happened. And this North Carolina team is much more defensive than we've seen North Carolina teams be in past. They're just riding on their defense this year. They've only allowed 10 goals. Casey Murphy in net has been tremendous. She has 11 clean sheets on the season, and Portland snapped that clean sheet streak for Casey Murphy in their last game. But for North Carolina, in their attack, we're used to seeing the previous North Carolina team putting up 17 shots a game, 8 of those shots on goal on average. And this season, they're not putting up those 20 shots on game. They're averaging around 10 shots a game, and 5 of those shots being on target. Just last match against Portland, stat-wise, North Carolina was outshot by the Thorns 24-10. So this match against Gotham is going to be so defensive, both for Gotham and for North Carolina. But I see Gotham coming out with a very, very narrow win just because they need it a little bit more. And Scott Parkinson has had time with this Gotham team to develop a little bit more of what he wants to see from them. So I'm going Gotham.
We're both going Gotham in this one. The next one to close out the doubleheader for Saturday is going to be Chicago Red Stars versus Portland Thorns FC. Chicago hosting Portland at SeatGeek Stadium in Bridgeview. Another team in need of a win, quite frankly. A little bit of a similar scenario to Gotham, but they're a team that's currently in the playoff picture. They're sitting in 5th place at the moment, and they're going up against the best team in the league. That's really been the one consistent narrative really out of the entire 21 season so far, is that Portland Thorns have constantly been this threat. They've been the deepest team in the league, and they've been the winningest team in the league. They are leading right now with 38 points. But both these teams coming off of the same bye week, and having a number of players who got called into those U.S. friendlies against Paraguay. And they also, for the Portland side, I think they also were missing somebody like a Rocky Rodriguez, who had spent some time with the Costa Rican international team. So I'm going to be curious to see how these teams look, sort of coming out of the break, yes, but also having had some key players unavailable and getting minutes with their international sides. But I really do feel like this actually might come down to a draw, even though Chicago is hitting this point of the season where they've got 5 games remaining in their season, and they really do have to try to maybe give themselves some cushion in the middle of this playoff picture. But I think this Portland Thorn side is just way too good. So we'll see what happens, but I really do think this might play out to a narrow draw between these two teams.
I see the draw happening as well. And at that point, Chicago still takes 2 points off Portland and gives themselves a point, because Chicago does need points in the standings just to, like you said, give themselves a cushion. Chicago unbeaten in their last 4 matches. It's their longest unbeaten streak of the season. And they have 20 goals on the season, and 9 of those came off set pieces. Now, remember, back in the middle of the season, there was a number of own goal situations for Chicago, but it doesn't matter. On the stat sheets, they still got those goals. A lot of them did come off set pieces, whether it was a corner kick or a free kick around the 18-yard box in the attacking end. And Portland, they lead the league in points. They're sitting in number 1 with 38 points, and they lead the league in goals, scoring 25 goals this year. So I think the Portland attack and their offense can cause a lot of trouble for Chicago. I don't want to say this one is a draw only because you said it, so I'm going to give it to Portland just because of how hot they've been going. And I think they could outplay Chicago in this game, but man, sometimes the Red Stars just surprises me. And the way Malpew played in that first international match against Paraguay, unbelievable. If she can bring a little bit of that mojo to the Chicago team, this could be a really, really tight match, but I'll give it to Portland just to not be a draw with you.
I feel that. Hopefully it's a fun one no matter what happens. Looking ahead to Sunday, it's a triple header. Kicking things off is Racing Louisville FC going up against Houston Dash. Houston on the road in this one, but when we're talking about teams who are looking to get into that real playoff push kind of vibe, you've got Racing Louisville on the outside looking in at number 9 in the standings, and you've got Houston Dash also on the outside looking in at number 7 with 23 points. So they are also equally, thirsty for a win as well, all to try to secure all 3 points. Racing Louisville is going to need both wins and probably a little bit of luck at this point in order to try to leapfrog into the top 6. But Houston, much, much closer than anyone else in that current 7 through 10 position. So I'm going to be going with Houston on this one. I like that Christy Mewis got a run out with the national team. I think she was looking pretty good out there when she was tasked with the start. Rachel Daly is currently with the England international side, but she's also currently going through some things on the personal side. She recently announced the passing of her father. So again, as we're recording this, we don't have the updates in terms of who will essentially be available or unavailable on these things, but in the event she is unavailable for this match, that's going to be a huge loss for this Houston Dash side. But that's not to say that they don't have options in the attack, because this was the only team, Lisa,
you can't go back. You already picked
Lisa,
them.
This was the only team, Houston Dash were the only team that actually did play an exhibition game during this break. They went head to head against Liga MX Femenil side, Tigres Femenil, and they defeated them at a huge scoreline. And Michelle Prince had a great game in that one. So I'm going with Houston all the way for sure in this one.
Yeah, even if there's no Rachel Daly, you can't go back on that. You can't go back.
I'm not.
So I like that. And you're right, with Houston playing the match, the friendly over this bye week where NWSL play was paused. And Racing Louisville, last time they were out, they played against Orlando, and a devastating injury to Nadia Nadim. So they will be without her. 2 weeks back, she got injured, ACL, big destroying of the knee for Nadim, which is just devastating. But Racing Louisville, they need a win. They have Ebony Salmon, who leads Louisville with 5 goals. She's in that Golden Boot race towards the top. She has a few above her, but she's still in there, scoring 5 goals on the season. I want Racing Louisville to win this one, so I'm going to pick them, and I might lean towards them. Something else for Houston, a little bit of news. Christine Nairn announced her retirement for the Dash. She played her last game in the friendly last week, and she joined Houston's Fire Department Academy. She's going to become a firefighter. I am so happy for her. I am so proud of her. Nairn has been with the NWSL since its start in 2013. So cheers to Christine Nairn, and congratulations to her moving on to the Fire Academy, staying in Houston. So I'm sure she'll be a big supporter of the Dash. But for this one, I want to go with Racing because I want them to get a win, even though I think Houston could give them a lot, as Houston sits number 7 in the standings and Racing Louisville is number 9. So 23 points and then 17 points. There's a bit of a gap there for them, but I want Racing Louisville to get this win. So I'm just picking them.
Right on. I'll take it. Note it.
It comes down to gut feeling.
Take the notes. We're going to compare when we come back for the recap. For the second match for Sunday, it's Washington Spirit versus Kansas City NWSL. You've got Washington Spirit. Shout out to them, doing enough to still be in the playoff picture despite not playing their last 2 competitive fixtures in the NWSL regular
since season. August 29th. That was their last game. August 29th. The game against North Carolina with the sign. Well, we took you guys all through it, but
some of these players will have had almost a month off of the pitch in this game. And it's a game that they're hosting. They're hosting the last place team in the league.
So does that help or hurt them to have almost 3 weeks off?
I think it hurts them.
I do too.
I think it hurts them. I think at this point in the season, the final stretch, the stretch in which so many teams are locked into playoff mode in their playoff push, it hurts a team like the Spirit to have had 2 games taken away from them, essentially, and a month away from the game. I mean, especially when we're hearing, somebody like Andy Sullivan who got called into those games. It's, again, this goes back to what we were talking about at the top half of this podcast, that, a player like Sullivan is almost feeling a sense of relief, stepping away from the situation at Washington Spirit and being placed into national team camps. It was almost a sense of relief to get away and just get back to playing the sport that she loves. So she looked great in those games. Emily Sonnet got a start in this game. Kelly O'Hara got some time on the pitch against Paraguay. So these are the only players for the Washington Spirit who were able to see time on the pitch over the last month for the Spirit side. So while Andy Sullivan is looking, really great, who's to say that she's going to get tasked with a start coming off of an international window in this game? I'm not too sure. Well, it'll be interesting to sort of see what interim head coach Chris Ward puts out there. But if I'm Kansas City, you're absolutely looking at this game as you're like, there's a wounded animal here, and you're the prey, and you're going to just like pounce. So, if Kansas City at this point of the season are essentially waving the white flag and conceding and saying, hey, we're not going anywhere, this year. We're already looking ahead to 2022. The ownership is already releasing a lot of great news around the team in terms of establishing a brand new training facility, the announcement that they will be playing their games alongside Sporting Kansas City in their facility in Children's Mercy Park. So it's a lot of looking ahead for this team. So if you're trying to just sort of close out your season, looking ahead and on a positive theme, you're absolutely looking at this game and saying, let's take it to this team. I think Kansas City may walk away with a narrow win here.
So you'll give them a win.
Yeah, I will.
Yes, I mean, I echo everything that you just said for Washington. They've been on a break and international duty. And now with the announcement that the Spirit Squadron won't be there, I think that'll change the home atmosphere for the players. Not positively. I'm not going to say negatively, but it changes the home environment for those players to not have the drums and the flags and everything like that, which I understand why, but it changes things. I think that this is a game that Kansas City could come into, but you also remember there are really young players on this Washington squad. So maybe this break was really good for them. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, Sandra.
I think that's fair. I think the same arguments could be made for them for a win.
Maybe it was really good for them to get a little mental break from the season, from all the news that's been happening, to not have to play, not have to travel these last 3 weeks. And for all the youngsters in Trinity Rodman and Ashley Sanchez and Ashley Hatch to be able to kind of hit the reset button. It could go both ways. I honestly see this one as a draw. I think Kansas City will put up a fight, but I see it as a draw. I don't think that Washington will be that much of a wounded animal this weekend.
I think that's fair. Honestly, I agree. I mean, I think go either way, but I'm gonna lean towards Kansas City a little bit. Let's close it out, Lisa. We got Orland versus Orlando Pride. We're talking about teams that have not seen some time on the pitch in a little bit, and Orland, the first and last team that was issued the forfeit by the league for their September 12th game. They were unable to play that one, and then that sort of rolled into the international break. So this is another team that has had some time away off of the pitch. I don't know if that will essentially work against them in this one. I think they're in a little bit of a different position than they are compared to a team like the Washington Spirit. I'm sure somebody like Laura Harvey has been tasked the team with a lot of work to put in to this game day. And they're also keeping their eye on the table with both of these forfeitures for Portland and for Orland. That widened the gap a little bit between 1 and 2 when we're looking and keeping our eye on something like the Shield race. So if you're Orland, you're a franchise that's not unfamiliar with chasing a Shield, and you want to try to collect these points as much as you can. So I'm going with Orland in this one against Orlando Pride.
I see that outcome as well. I don't know. I'm not picking yet. Let me talk it out. So Orland, unbeaten in their last 4 matches. And the first half of the season and the second half of the season for OL Reign has looked tremendously different. Maybe that's due to the international players coming back from the Olympics. I think Laura Harvey plays a huge role in that change that we've seen from OL Reign, especially with her personnel positioning on the field, with Sofia Huerta playing more of an outside back position and truly excelling in that role. But in the last 10 games for OL Reign, they have gone seven wins, 2 losses, and 1 tie, earning 22 points in those 10 games. That is tremendous. They've scored 24 goals all season. They're number 2 in the league, sitting right behind Portland Thorns. Bethany Balcer is tied for the Golden Boot race alongside Sydney Leroux. They each have 8 goals on the season. Megan Rapinoe is averaging a goal or an assist in every single game. Jess Fishlock is number 2 on the team behind Balcer with 7 goals and assists. They have a lot of star power in the attack. I understand where you're coming from. However, this Orlando Pride team, they're coming off a big win over Racing Louisville, 3-1. They had huge goal scorers in that game, if you remember. Martha, Sydney Leroux, and Alex Morgan all getting a piece of the action. We just saw Alex Morgan score a hat trick.
Yeah.
International friendly.
Yeah, we saw Martha score a banger on a free kick.
Martha score a banger. I think that the star power for Orlando is still shining bright and potentially getting brighter and brighter. And I think when you have a player like Alex Morgan, who's on her game in the attack, and a player like Marta, who is on her game, because let's face it, they've had some off matches throughout this regular season, it elevates the game for Taylor Korniak and Erica Timrak and even Sydney Leroux, who seems to always be on her game. She never has an off second. I'm giving this one to Orlando.
All right. I'm going to hold you to that. This is the same team that you said you had to take, and you said they've got some reckless challenge going on. There's a little bit of a reckless vibe.
It doesn't mean they're going to lose the game.
Doesn't mean they're going to lose the game. So we'll see.
Might go off on a stretcher, which I'm still going to stand by. I think Orlando has been a little aggressive, but I think it's played to their advantages in those games because they're taking other teams out.
I do think it's significant that this is the game to sort of close out the weekend.
Yes.
All these games. So in terms of our game of the week to take a look at, I think this is the one I'm going to circle and keep my eye on for sure. OL Reign versus Orlando. If there's only one game that you can watch this week, y'all watch this game. Take a look at it. Folks, we're going to give you the rundown of the standings real quick before we exit out of the show. Portland Thorns in first place with 38 points. OL Reign in second place with 32 points. Third place through sixth place is where it gets a little bit more narrow and anything can happen. It's North Carolina Courage with 29 points. Orlando Pride in fourth place with 28 points. Chicago Red Stars in fifth place with 26 points. And the Washington Spirit in sixth place with 23 points. On the outside looking in, it's Houston Dash in seventh place with 23 points. Gotham FC in eighth place with 22 points. Racing Louisville FC in ninth place with 17 points. And in 10th place, Kansas City NWSL with 11 points. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today and listening to us on this lengthier episode. I just want to remind you that you can follow us on Twitter at Attacking Third. If you've enjoyed what you've heard here today, you can follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. And if you do that, you can go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. And if you leave us a 5-star review with a question, we will answer it during our mailbag segments. So I also want to just let you know that we're available as video. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Visit youtube.com/Attacking Third. Get excited about NWSL, folks. I know there's a lot going on, but it's back. The soccer is back. And we will have the recap episode for you all back on Monday. Join us then. For Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.